All right. Well, welcome to my new course the uh, for the spring term of Ollie. I'm doing a class called Global Hotspots Part 3. The first thing I should say is don't worry if you didn't take part 1 or part 2. This is not the kind of class where you have to take the first two to understand the third. It is a standalone course. The reason it's called part 3 is because it's the same type of class. What I do with the Global Hotspots class is I choose various what are called hotspots, geopolitical hotspots around the world, and do an in-depth explanation of how they got that way and what we can expect to see in the near and perhaps long-term future. So the class will also be a little bit different. It's a 6-week class, and there's going to be a 2-week hiatus in the middle of it due to a trip I will potentially be on, but it will be 6 sessions. And so let me just walk you through quickly what we're going to cover. The first one we're going to cover, in a previous hotspots, I did Russia. This time around, we're going to do Ukraine, obviously for obvious reasons. So we'll do a whole lecture on Ukraine, what's going on there, where are things going to go. I don't know where things will be by the time I get to the start of the class, but that will be the first lecture. Then we're going to move to Africa and take a look at Ethiopia and look at the conflict and what some are calling a genocidal conflict in the Tigrayan region of Ethiopia. For week 3, we're going to switch gears and go to a place you probably wouldn't normally think of as a hotspot, at least now, which is Northern Ireland. The reason we're going to do that is because April 2023 is the 25th anniversary of the peace agreement, the Belfast Accord, otherwise known as the Good Friday Agreement, that brought an end to the troubles in Northern Ireland. So what we're going to do is kind of take a retrospective look at that peace agreement, considering that it's considered one of the best and most stable peace agreements to conflict, and see how well it has held up over the last 25 years. After that, we're going to switch gears and go to Asia and talk about Taiwan, whether or not we should be worried about or we should be expecting Xi Jinping to start pushing more aggressively to force the reunification of Taiwan with China. Week 5, we'll go to the Middle East and talk about Iran, and include not only discussion of the current state of Iran's nuclear program and Iran's regional profile, regional threat in the region, but also we'll look at the most recent protests that are still actually happening in Iran, even though they seem to have fallen out of the headlines. These would be protests that started over the death of a woman who ended up in custody for not wearing a headscarf, and then kind of quickly expanded into protests against the legitimacy of the Islamic Republic's regime and governing body in the first place. And so that'll be week 5. The very last week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to revisit a number of the important cases I talked about in the first 2 iterations course, Global Hotspots Part 1 and Part 2, and offer a quick overview of them, but more importantly, offer updates on things that have happened since I last taught them, in some cases, I think even as long as 3 years ago. So there's a lot to talk about. The reason we've got part 3 is because there are new hotspots every year. There'll most likely in the future be a Global Hotspots Part 4. But for now, we have Part 3. And I hope you'll join me for this journey around the world to try to understand the things that should concern us. Hope to see you there.